The Angry Chicken is a production of amove.tv. Check out Amove TV for more podcasts covering Blizzard games. And for more of Jocelyn's gaming podcasts, visit josplays.com. The Angry Chicken is brought to you by our legendary patrons over at patreon.com/TAC.
Time's up. Let's do this.
Legendary.
You face Jaraxxus. You smell like a leopard gnome. I knew it. So hot.
A podcast about Hearthstone and Battlegrounds. This is The Angry Chicken!
Welcome back, everyone. 400 episodes, and we just keep marching forward. This is The Angry Chicken, episode 401. I'm Garrett Weinzerl, here, not as always, but it's starting to feel that way, with RidiculousHat. Jocelyn is unfortunately had a dental, we don't want to use the term emergency, it brings up too many concerns and worries, but as you put it in the pre-show, RidiculousHat, a situation that had to come up. As dental things do, maybe not the most comfortable feelings in the world, probably not conducive to talking for 90 minutes to 3 hours, depending on, it's usually closer to 3 hours because Hearthstone is just a game that doesn't quit. It refuses to quit. So anyways, Joss is fine. She offered to power through. We told her don't, because we were planning on having Hat on anyway to talk about the wild new meta that we found ourselves in. So that's what's going on with Joss. Tweeted her at Joss Plays. Let her know that she's missed. But welcome back, Hat. It's back to back. Would you call it? Are you going for the hat trick?
And I would call it like back to tack to back, something like that.
Oh, tack to back tack appearances.
There's something like that, but it starts to become very tongue twistery. But yes, thanks for having me back on. There are fewer people here than last time, which is different.
Just a bit. It'll be a little easier to get a word in edgewise. But I'm going to be honest, probably a little less fun.
Yes, different. 66% reduction in hosts. So like that's a dramatic drop. It's like we're the anti-GameStop.
Yes. This is the thing.
Topical.
Like, when you have made yes, well done. I bought one share of AMC just to make it easier to see what's happening with it. And at the moment, I think I'm down a few cents now. But I was up like $5. So, stocks, how do they work?
I don't know. I just play video games. I see all these people out here like that, not gambling, but like the kind of gambling that people do when they're wearing ties. And it looks exciting and also nerve-wracking. And I'm just going to keep my money where it is.
Well, considering how I've basically never... I have very little actual real gambling under my belt. All I know about gambling I learned from James Bond. So I am of the belief that all gambling happens with ties on. It's just,
that's true.
Sometimes they're bow ties.
Yeah, and that explains the phrase stocks and bonds.
We figured it out. Now, if I could just figure out why we're so obsessed with hedges, I'm gonna figure out how to do some hedge art and keep my shrubbery alive, I guess. Anyways, boy, this went on far too long. We're back to your regularly scheduled The Angry Chicken, where we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about news, of which there's more of it than we would have expected, including a patch that landed like 2 hours before the show. We are going to talk about the mysterious bundles that have been showing up. We're going to talk about Hearthstone Masters. We're going to talk about the mini set. We're going to talk about Ramp Paladin. We're basically returning to like a classic strategy segment today, which we haven't done in quite a while. If there's time, we'll check in on Battlegrounds. I'm not sure there will be time, and then we'll take an email or two. But before we get into that, man, like how is post mini set life treating you? Because to me, it has been going by so fast and so furious. You would think I would remember that the name of the mini set has something to do with racing, but I've just filed it away on my brain as mini set. That's all I call it. And I'm personally just seeing a lot of really kind of by the books aggro decks is my experience on ladder.
So I think you'll find that most people you talk to will have pretty dramatically different experiences. When did we record 400? Was that last Thursday? Last Wednesday? Last Thursday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It feels like years ago because it was a long episode. It was all we really went on a journey with it, and then like if you live in the States, we changed presidents the day after. So
yes, right. What day of the week is it today? Is it Wednesday?
Today is Wednesday when we usually record, and we avoided recording on such last week because, as Celestalon reminded us, probably shouldn't be recording on Inauguration Day. If for no other reason, then no one would be watching us. They'd be watching Lady Gaga. What are you doing? What were you thinking?
So, in the past 9 days, new set announced, new set released, XR AMA, new set patched, Hearthstone Masters announcement. Also, like real life stuff, like that, like it's social media is social media. It's been there's a lot going on.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on. So I don't know, like there's
a bit.
It's a chaotic time.
Yeah,
it's a chaotic time.
Yeah.
So I've played a lot of Hearthstone. Because Hearthstone is a fun game, and this is a Hearthstone podcast. But in addition to like doing a bunch of Hearthstone content, I've also just been playing a lot of Hearthstone. I played a bunch of BGs because Darkman Prize are still super fun, and I wanted to see what Ticketus and Greybow were about. I took Greybow and tried to take Taunt Comp, 8th place, not great, but BG still fun. Standard all over the place. We're going to talk about that for most of this episode. Like a lot of this episode, but I've been playing a different deck every day. And Wild has some stuff going on. We'll talk about that too. And I played some duels over the weekend. And I like that mode.
We haven't really talked to you about it because we don't really talk about duels on here because outside of like the first few weeks, Jocelyn and I both really haven't gotten hooked by it. So is that a new thing for you? Is it a relatively new thing that you're into duels?
It's a relatively new thing. It's not a new thing that I'm into roguelikes. And I was thinking about all the games I've been playing lately, and they are Hearthstone and roguelikes, and duels is both. Like, I've been still playing a bunch of Hades, playing this cool game called Nova Drift, which is a top-down asteroid-style roguelike. I've been playing One Step from Eden, which is a grid-based, timing-based roguelike. Slay the Spire, obviously, and then Hearthstone. And I don't have a lot of time to do things other than video games. And duels is kind of like, there's something very much the 2020-2021 gaming space is very much about the what happens next moment in gaming is so crucial to so many of the games that are great out there. Think about BGs. Every time you roll, you're like, do I hit the triple? Every time you see the Darkmoon prize, every time you level up, it's all about the what happens next. And duels kind of has that too between each game, but it's also, I play exclusively casual duels. I don't do heroic because it's a mode that I can half-ass it and feel cool with it and play it on my iPad on the couch, but then also assemble this totally broken constructed deck if I'm feeling the urge to do constructed and not Tavern Brawl. Relatively recent, but I'm glad it's in the client, and queue times have been much faster since the most recent update.
Yeah, no, that is fair. That is something I noticed as well. But that's okay. So that's interesting that you've that was. It sounds like that's what it took for you to kind of get bought in and play with more regularity. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't know how regular. Yeah. I don't know if duels is going to stay a big part of my repertoire, but I'm like standard. My rank is all right right now. I'm hovering around 250 on NA. So I'm not playing quite as much. There's nothing to sit on for that rank, but it's late in the month at a reasonable rank. I'm a lot less likely to just like grab a meme looking deck list and run it on the ladder. So when I'm looking for a constructed itch, I would lean into Wild for a little bit, but I haven't been enjoying Wild for a bit, so I've been leaning into duels instead. And I'm kind of glad I did. It's a different kind of vibe, but it's a really fun couch mode that I've been enjoying, and I haven't felt a need to be fully present for, which is pretty nice in the chaotic energy of 2021 so far. That's fair. I think the deck we're going to talk about today is also lends itself pretty well to couch mode, by the way. As long as you are, I don't know, okay with possibly bricking horribly, which again we will talk about. But yeah, I was I was away for a little bit. My wife surprised me with a mini getaway for my birthday, which was this past week. And so I got back and tried to slam a bunch of Battlegrounds games in between wanting to actually try out the new constructed meta, and haven't had a chance to play either of the new heroes. And also, I tried making demon comps work, and well, everyone else was too. People are excited about those new demon minions, and so that hasn't worked out either. So I've had some really great games in Battlegrounds, but they're also unremarkable stories and boring because I was just doing what worked before because that's not what people were chasing in my lobby.
Yeah. You're not going to come on here and be like, hey, you know what's great in the new patch? I took a bunch of Murlocs and poisoned people to death. But yeah, Murlocs
although I
still good.
Still didn't do that because Murlocs and me, we just don't get along. But I had some great beast games, some great menagerie games. It's fine. But Battlegrounds, I think, is in a pretty damn good place. Consistent concerns from streamers that play it much more than I do about Khadgar notwithstanding.
That sounds like a problem for people who are good at the game, so I haven't experienced that. That's definitely all the 10K plus people I know, which is like 3 people are like, yeah, Khadgar sucks. And I'm like, I don't know. Whenever I try and take it, I die. And whenever other people try and take it, they die. So it seems fine to me down here at 55.
Because you're not doing the IP exploit, I believe. But yeah.
I mean, there's that, and there's, being able to buy a minion and use it 3 turns later for a particularly labor-intensive, like APM pivot is, even if you do it right, even if you have the extra time, it's difficult to pull off and difficult to understand when and where and how. But probably should be adjusted. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we have quite a bit to talk about today. Before we get into this week's news, we do want to thank everyone that's supporting The Angry Chicken over at patreon.com/TAC. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support it, that's the best way to do so. You get some perks like access to the ad-free version of the podcast feed, our Discord server, among other things. And we got quite a few new patrons after our 400th episode. So thank you so very, very much, folks. Sounds like you liked what we were doing. So thank you to our most recent patrons, Mike Puckett, War Eagle Joel, I almost said Joe, but it's Joel. I had to double check myself on that one. There is an L on there. Kieran, Allen, and Stompa. Thank you very much for supporting us here at The Angry Chicken. And to everyone listening to the sound of my voice, if you like TAC, you like what we're doing, you want to support us, patreon.com/TAC is the best way to do so. So go check it out. And now, Hat, let's get into it. This week's Hearthstone news.
Good news, everyone!
We got a patch today. 19.4.1 dropped, and the majority of it is balance updates for duels. It's the vast majority, which means if you're a duels player, you're probably not used to getting your news from this show, and that will continue. So I would highly recommend go and checking out the patch notes in full if you are a duels player. However, Hysteria is getting a balance change, and Phantom achievements are now gone. And no, not unfortunately, not the early popping of achievements, but fortunately, the red exclamation mark that refuses to leave.
By far the most important change?
Well, I mean, yeah, it was clearly an unplayable game with a exclamation mark that refused to leave one screen of the game.
Are you judging? Are you judging me?
Wait, was that you making those posts on Reddit?
I have to go. No, I have not made a Reddit post in a while, but I will say I checked looking for that achievement more frequently than I should probably admit. And
dude, I think we're in the same boat because I did the same thing.
Yes.
I even after I knew and I saw comments that it was like, yes, it's a known issue, we're gonna fix it, I still was like, oh yeah, because it's just habit. It is you go back to that screen and you have to clear those out and you have to see what happened. And well, there's nothing to see here is really what that bug should be renamed to. But yeah.
Thankfully, they fixed the achievement scrolling bug. I'm really glad that that's not a thing where when you clicked it to clear, it would automatically scroll the way back up. So at least now you can just click your achievements all the way through. But that last one, it wasn't there.
Yeah, the scrolling one actually annoyed me more than the exclamation mark. Because when there actually was something to find, it was just like, why am I on a treadmill all of a sudden in my Hearthstone game?
Yes.
But
it's a big quality of life improvement. And, they've been making a few of those. They've been patching it up. It's, the 19.0 build has steadily improved.
Yeah. It's a minor thing. I'm not chasing achievement points by any means, but it's nice that it's getting better, because I definitely noticed these issues. So, but let's talk about the balance change with Hysteria. So it used to read, choose a minion, it attacks random minions until it dies. They have changed it to where it now reads, choose an enemy minion, it attacks random minions until it dies. And so you can no longer target your own minion with this spell, which is targeting the wild OTK, and which involves Wretched Tiller, which Alec Dawson commented on, because Alec Dawson was asked, hey, why Hysteria? Why not Wretched Tiller? Which I can get to a certain degree. But Dawson replied, quote, believe it to be the best future-proof change. We're going to keep making on-attack triggers, and any plan where you can purposely skip your opponent's turn isn't something we want around. Hurts to lose some of the more interesting decisions with Hysteria, but felt it was right. And so here we are. Do you think this was the right play, Hat?
So before I answer that, we should explain how the combo works. For those of you that haven't played Wild, and for those of you that don't know what Wretched Tiller is, it's a common from Knights of the Frozen Throne, a 1-mana 1/1. Whenever this minion attacks, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. When you play him, he says, "Golly Bob Howdy, I am undead." And you play him. You make him immune with the Death Speaker. You either shrink him with a Shrinkmeister if you're a priest, or you make the other Death Speaker immune with a second Death Speaker. And then you play Hysteria on your Wretched Tiller. It attacks to the limit of Hysteria, which is hard-coded in 30 times, which is 60 damage, because whenever Wretched Tiller attacks, 2 damage to the enemy hero. And there's an interesting thing about Hysteria. The way it's implemented, it doesn't stop attacking if one of the player dies in the middle. It keeps triggering. So you will see the full 30 times unless you concede in the middle. As you can imagine, this is a poor player experience. On top of that, the timing of the animations meant that if you lived through it, the 60 damage, you would not get any time on your turn to play anything, because it did the thing with the Sarah portals used to do, where it would overwrite your turn with the animation timing, and your turn could actually be skipped unless you did the Battlegrounds disconnect, because that would skip the animations and drop you into your turn.
Boy, it just keeps rearing. Animations just keep rearing their concerning encroaching on my playtime head.
I would say that there were a lot of things about this particular interaction that were unintended. And, they changed it 6 days after the set was released. We can't really ask for more than that. It's unfortunate because it does change the functionality of Hysteria. They ripped the Band-Aid off pretty early. I'm glad that we didn't get used to this card, but a lot of the players I know, especially the players that were excited with Priest, a lot of times you would go you would play a minion, you would Apotheosis it, you would cast Wave of Apathy, and you would play Hysteria, and you would gain your entire life total back. And that was cool. And it's not random, and it's a powerful card. And it's just kind of, they removed that functionality pretty quick. It's a nerf they had to make, I think, because on attack triggers and animations and all that, it's complex, and they're not going to deal with these underlying tech issues quickly with BlizzCon coming up in a month. And even then, we've known animations have been tough to manage for a long time in Hearthstone. So removing the possibility of that happening, I think, makes more sense. But I wouldn't blame any Priest or Warlock players that are disappointed that this cool card got a little less cool. Yeah.
You are. We should probably just stop having you on, because I tend to agree with you too much.
What's the problem?
Because you're covering a lot of the bases, which is just how much quicker could this have been addressed? It's a bummer for a new card that a lot of players were excited about to kind of be, or have a major chunk of what makes it interesting taken out.
Though it's still really good. I do want to point out, I have never seen it played on a player's own minion outside of Wretched Tiller combo, and it's still been nuts in Standard whenever I've seen it or played with it. It's like a mini Brawl. People compare it to Ramming Speed or Bladestorm, but this is really good for messy boards. Bladestorm's really good for clean boards. If your opponent has a big board with a bunch of stuff, you can play this on a Questing Adventure, Edwin, or whatever, or against an Evolve Shaman, or against a Libram of Hope token, and just all their stuff dies. Really great against Divine Shields. I still think the card's really good, but it's definitely less interesting. Now it's a powerful removal tool instead of something you can abuse with your own minions. There's some nuance to it, but with BlizzCon line in a month and this change going live so quickly, I think it's hard to complain about, even though it's probably not ideal.
I agree. And then there's as I previewed at the top of the show, there's bundles making it into the store, and not everyone is seeing the same bundle.
But they're super weird.
Yeah, which is super weird, but kind of cool, but still made me just want to go and read like CM replies explaining exactly what was going on.
Before we get into that, there's one other thing from the patch notes I want to cover.
Oh.
Bone Crusher, the Duels treasure. The dev comment says, turns out Bone Crusher is a silly rabbit. And no, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
It says that
Big Tricks fan.
In the patch notes. Yeah. H to Bayrak, if that was you, you're great. He's the Duels designer.
Gotcha.
I think it was him.
So to the bundles that have been showing up, CM KO posted on Reddit saying that they are testing some new types of offers in the shop, which will cause some users to see different offers, which is intended. And then also explained that if you check the in-game shop and the web shop, you will see any offers available to you. And you and I were talking with Joss today, and we're curious if there was any sort of gamification going on, that if we're maybe players who spend a little bit more money, if only I could think of a term for that, if we were more likely to see the largest bundle, because there's like a small, a medium, and a large bundle being offered. And it's
actually weirder than you think too, because it's not just small, medium, large. That's the majority of them. Some players are seeing a wild bundle.
Oh, that's right. I did hear about that. I forgot to add it to the notes. And all three of us saw the exact same large standard bundle.
But if you go to the web shop, if any player goes to the web shop, they will see the 20 for 20. But in client, you'll get one of 5 random ones. There's actually a 5th one that's Tavern Passes.
There's a Tavern Pass one?
Yep. Apparently it's 5 Tavern tickets.
Huh.
They're doing some strange market testing. And so the timing of this bundle makes sense. Because what they've done, you remember that bundle right after Darkmoon Fair came out, where it had Skullomance packs. And
the one that made everyone very, very angry.
Well, the timing was poor, but it was a great deal for a catch-up bundle, which is what this is
absolutely, too. Yes, yeah. I just want to make sure we're on the same page about the right bundle. Yeah, it was good value. Yes. It was poor timing.
Yes. I think that that's the motto of Blizzard's November this year. But this bundle is also, it's a catch-up bundle, but they're definitely testing different segments and seeing how they respond. But I think it makes sense if they're testing. And what I've found anecdotally, there's no specific correlation based on player profile and the bundle you'll see. Because if you want to test and see how players will react, you want similarly situated players to see different things. Like you want 3 different whales, each of them to get 3 different bundles. And if one of them buys them and the other 2 don't, like, again, you scale that up to the massive Blizzard scale. You want similar groups to see different stuff so you know what to sell them next time.
Yeah. So I didn't go through. So I was offered the largest one, which I believe was, what, was it 30 for 30?
35. I think it was 35 packs and 2 bundles. Or 2 legendaries. 2
legendaries, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I've got my order history open right now, and all it does is say the name of it. It doesn't tell me how many packs were in the bundle, because I can't remember the exact number of packs. But it was the $30 one. I was like, all right, this is clearly Hat. I'm doing this for science. I'm going to buy some Hearthstone packs so that the fine listeners at home, they can live vicariously through my money and know that if this is worth their dime or not. And Well,
we appreciate your dedication and sacrifice.
Yeah. What I haven't tried is to go onto the store and then buy a smaller bundle. Is there anything stopping me from doing that?
I don't think so. I think you can buy both.
So I could get 4 guaranteed Dark Moon legendaries.
I think yes.
Because
I don't
the
know.
$20 one also offers 2 guaranteed legendaries. And that's what I'm curious about. Oh, it says Tavern Special Bundle can only be redeemed once per account.
But what happens if you were to buy it? Click buy now. What happens?
I guess we'll see what happens.
Let's do it live. Let's do it live.
We are. I'm not going to show it because, I have to enter things and you can see last 4 of things. And if this goes through, it went through. Okay.
Yes, you can buy 2 bundles.
Great. All right. To our patrons, thank you very much, because I would have been uncomfortable doing that otherwise. Jeez.
No, I'll spot you. It'll be fine.
Okay, so I got even more. Yeah, I'm gonna take this one further and make sure I didn't accidentally claim it on the wrong account. But yeah, that's
this is how content is made, folks.
This
is how we make the donuts.
That's a lot of cards, and again, not a bad value. It did also remind me, though, Hat, just how god awful my pack opening luck was, because I got a lot out of the 30-pack or 35 packs that I bought.
You were pretty behind going into this, and then you opened some spicy goodness.
Yeah, I got a golden
from the first 35.
I got a golden Tenmu, and then I got like 2 more
Tenmu.
legendaries in 2 packs back to back, and then in my like final 3 packs I got another legendary. So I was up 4 legendaries in addition to the 2 guaranteed legendaries, and one of those legendaries was golden, which is whatever. You don't have a higher chance of getting anything. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay, yeah, I'm getting more legendaries right now, and it's on my main account. And yeah, okay, so there's nothing stopping you from buying
there you go.
more than one of these.
Get your packs.
More than one of these bundles. Oh, finally, I have your rel. My God.
Yes, there you go. But it's not Tenmu. It's Tenwu.
My bad.
It's not set to M for mini. It's set to W for Wumbo.
Oh, look I see what you did there. I'm glad Hachikuma was online, because he's reminding me that one of the final legendary I cracked was Deck of Chaos, which is like in my final 3 packs.
I think I still don't have that, and like I'm glad it's not good, but I'm sad it's not good. I have complicated feelings, chaotic feelings even.
Yeah. So, listeners, just know, I burnt a lot of money in research for you. For you.
Yes. We're here for you, listeners.
For the listener. The fact that my collection is getting bigger and I'm filling in some massive gaps in my legendary collection, that is just the burden I have to bear for science.
And they didn't announce this bundle ahead of time. Like this, everyone was just tweeting randomly, hey, are you seeing this? Hey, did you see this? What's going on? It was random bundle appearing in the store. And when I say random bundle, I mean like there were a bunch of different options that you assigned randomly, and there's no way to choose. There were some players that I was talking to, like I could really go for some, like if I got wild packs, I would have bought it. But since I got one of the standard ones and I can't choose, I'm not going to spend anything. I don't know if they have a way for the players to change it, but it's definitely interesting that they kind of just picked one that you're going to get, and that's what you're going to get.
Yeah, that it is strange, and it makes me wonder, like, because my brain always comes back to there are limitations to the Hearthstone client that we do not understand beyond the Hearthstone client is problematic to design around. Like it is very confining. All the different forms that take, we don't know. And Team 5 is never going to sit and give us a laundry list of all of the things that are possible and all of the things that are impossible and why. But this is one of those things where I look at it and I go, are we hitting like a soft cap on how many things can even be listed in the store? Doesn't matter, because there is the online store and you can see more. How much different is this from every time you go to Amazon, it being like, hey, based on all the crap you usually buy, here's some other crap we think you would like.
Yeah, the Hearthstone team is rapidly expanding. There are still so many postings on the website for engineers and developers and all that. I would assume they're improving capability for like modular stuff like this. But it is a bit jarring for it to just appear out of nowhere and for us to not really understand it and for the explanation to be so vague. So I'm hoping there's a bit more clarity going forward. And that's really been, like, I don't know if it's been a client or tech issue. It feels like it's been mostly communications issues, especially around the store, where we could have had just a little bit more clarity about this stuff.
Yeah, but with like prices and all that sort of stuff, they've always been really cagey about that. We never talk to the people who actually set the prices for things or have the final call on the economy, for probably obvious reasons. But I don't know, like a lot of thoughts there. I would assume there'd be a lot of volatility in the feedback that individuals that have a say in the economy of Hearthstone would receive from the public.
Yeah, if you were going to get financial people on the show, I would have imagined it would happen before November 2020, because after November 2020, the landscape is a little less friendly.
Yeah, and I don't mean to sit here and God, I hope no one is listening to this thing. Oh, this is a giant commercial for these bundles. I'm not saying go buy them. I did. Clearly.
You're not saying go buy them. You're just demonstrating how to do it live on the air.
I get nothing from you purchasing bundles.
Well, you get a URL.
When someone else purchases bundles, I get nothing.
Oh, yes.
I get absolutely nothing, except potentially another friend to play Hearthstone with, and they have a few more cards. What is really interesting this to me, though, is the tech that we're starting to assume exists, even though it hasn't been confirmed, which is, it sure does seem that what's being offered to you is curated based on your play habits or your purchase habits. And also the design of the bundles themselves point to that. Like, why even have a Tavern Pass bundle otherwise, unless you're trying to offer things to the various types of Hearthstone players that do very much exist? And to me, I just find that tech fascinating, and then my brain starts to immediately start to run away with, can we add this tech that I'm not even sure exists to the quest system so I could be offered quests more regularly for modes that I play regularly? And I'm really happy with the adjustments and the improvements that they have made to the quests, and that I can complete more quests and more modes. But at the same time, I see tech like this, and that's exactly where my brain goes. Give me an even more curated, even more specialized, even more custom Hearthstone experience based on how I play.
They've been steadily moving towards that for years. One of the biggest advancements that they made was Auto Deck Builder. Just the improvements in the Auto Deck Builder with the machine learning based around your collection and what people are playing. But that's more of, it aggregates what everybody is doing. The per player stuff, I think, could be a really interesting avenue if this is the start to that, because it benefits Blizzard and it benefits the player. Getting tailored recommendations is generally a good thing for the company that's recommending, and also a good thing for the player that doesn't have to work as hard to get them.
Yeah. Nah, it's all good points. It has been moving that direction, but there's something about this one that I find particularly interesting. I mean, it's also very, very surface level. It's very easy to see, compared to something like the deck builder. Like, I can't remember the last time I personally have used it, so I think I kind of have a bias against even kind of thinking about that and how it plays into this. So I'm glad that you thought about that. But I don't know. It's interesting. It's fascinating. You know, whether you want to buy it or not. I think it's cool tech. I would like the tech to be confirmed or denied, because we're still not even sure it exists, but it sure seems like it does. Getting a nod from Hat.
There's something.
Audio listeners.
There's something here. Yes.
Yeah. So let's move on to also interesting information given, but not as much as we may like, and talk about Hearthstone esports.
Do me a favor. Ask Joss about this next week. I wanted to hear Joss go off about this.
I want to hear Joss go off about this too. So Hearthstone Masters has been somewhat detailed for 2021. It is coming back. It is, however, going the way of StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3, and going to be Blizzard's going to be partnering with ESL to essentially run Hearthstone esports as part of a 2-year deal, confirmed by, I believe, ESL. that it's going to be at least 2 years of length. And so this is an interesting thing, and it comes with its own baggage because they're still calling it Masters, and there's still a Grandmasters. When this happened to StarCraft 2, it meant the end of WCS as we knew it. And it was a little doomsday over on the StarCraft side of things. I don't follow it nearly as closely as I used to, but honestly, it's still my favorite esport. I love StarCraft 2. So watch a good amount of the GSL every year. And to me as a viewer, it meant very little because my favorite tour was a GSL. It was already and has historically been produced in Korea by like Gom TV, and I forget who it is now. Different partner now, but it kind of stood on its own legs and was its own production that fed into Blizzard's, their official and their run tournament circuit. So this is unique, and yet comes in, I think, with that baggage of like, well, wait, is this the end of Hearthstone esports as we know it? And it looks like not really. It just looks like new stewards of Hearthstone esports.
So you're more familiar with those other games than I am. Did the production change at all? Like what you saw, did it look different? Did it feel different? Were the tournaments run differently?
I would imagine had I watched any region besides South Korean, yes, but I don't and didn't back then when the change happened. I've just basically been watching the South Korean scene exclusively for almost all of StarCraft's run, except when I was doing a StarCraft podcast. That's when I would keep up with like the NA scene and whatnot. But because of that, like GSL has more or less been the same since its inception, which predates Twitch TV. So there is that. Obviously, this changes and the production just looks better, but it's been its own standalone thing for so long, and something that, again, to pull in other Blizzard games that I'm very passionate about. We have been talking a lot about over on a Heroes of the Storm podcast, a game which esports was taken out back and ended by Blizzard Entertainment. And we looked at the StarCraft news as good news. It's like, okay, cool, because as Heroes of the Storm fans, I'm speaking somewhat generally here. I don't mean this to sound as hyperbolic as it's going to, but in general, I get the feeling that Heroes of the Storm fans do not trust Blizzard with their esports anymore, considering what happened with Heroes esports, which has led to me being trepidatious about any esports that Blizzard has a direct hand in moving forward as a heartbroken Heroes fan. And so I look at this and I go, oh, cool. Blizzard's not handling Hearthstone esports. I look at this with a lot of enthusiasm coming from a strange place. I think it's from a strange place, but hopefully that little bit of history on my Blizzard esports fandom kind of paints a picture as to why I'm having this reaction.
Makes it like an HGC's cancellation was 2 years ago. It's not like this is ancient history. This was the very end of 2018. And Hearthstone didn't have any qualifying tournaments or any announcements or any news or any ladder finishes or anything for 3 months. October, November, December. We found out through a tweet midway through January that top 32 on ladder matters. But after the last Masters Tour last year and Worlds, there was just nothing. No qualifier since September. So Hearthstone fans or Hearthstone players, pro players, were spooked. Rightfully so, because it seemed like silence and then cancellation 2 years ago. Wasn't that long ago. A lot of the pieces fit, and there were Hearthstone esports employees that were moving on, that were seen on Twitter. We noticed that people were saying "is my last day" and so on and so forth. But it turns out that the delay here and the turnover was almost certainly due to the ESL deal. And some of those Hearthstone esports employees landed immediately at ESL. They just moved right over. Now, not all of them. Abar, want to point out, had a beautiful and heartbreaking twit longer. He's been the producer for Hearthstone esports in-house for a long time. He's still with Blizzard, but in a role that really no longer exists. And it's not that Hearthstone esports is gone, but it's definitely taking on a very different form. And the past year was one of change. They moved everything to online only, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. But it's sure a lot cheaper to run online only than it is to get 6 venues a year and deal with travel costs. And They changed tournament structure to account for more people playing online. It's a lot more accessible for players from second and third world countries. You don't have to travel anywhere near as much because those costs were prohibitive. And really, like, exchange rates in general were pretty rough. And now players can just log in and get $850 US, which is quite a bit in other parts of the world, and even quite a bit to local pro players.
Yeah,
it's a new world. It's different. The real question that I have, and I think a lot of people have, is, well, two questions. One, will the tournaments look or feel different? And two, are they going to be on Twitch? Because if they're not on Twitch, feels like none of this matters. Because YouTube is where esports go to die.
Yes, which is the big, gaping, unanswered question here.
Yeah.
It's unknown. It sure...
And the deal with Google hasn't gone away. Like, making a deal with ESL doesn't mean you go to Google and say, hey, Google, we're not dealing with you anymore. But I don't, like, if Blizzard is still using Google's cloud services, which is where this entire deal came from anyways, it wasn't because Google's like, hey, we really want to show Hearthstone. It was more they made a deal for cloud services for their developers and then said, oh, yeah, by the way, part of this deal is all of our esports stuff will be on YouTube. If the Hearthstone esports team said, hey, we want Hearthstone back, I can't imagine that would be a sticking point for Google in a major way if there was an appropriate compensation.
I don't think so either, and it's part of the reason, like, I'm hopeful. I mean, just in general, it's been a rocky few years with Blizzard overseeing their own esports. I don't think it's been handled particularly well, and I don't think that's going to register as a particularly bold statement to a lot of listeners out there who are familiar with any other Blizzard esports, and even Hearthstone. There's been criticisms of how Grandmasters has played out to varying degrees of severity. But I have a lot of trust in ESL. I mean, back in September, they merged with DreamHack. There's that as well. You talked about the online only. We're still in it. We are still so in this damn pandemic, and I'm so sick of bringing it up. But we have a vaccine on the horizon. Here in the States, it's looking like it's still pretty far away if you're in my age bracket. But it's there. There is a light at the end of this tumultuous tunnel we have found ourselves in. And while LAN esport events may not be the very tip top of my mind, it is certainly something I miss dearly as a result of 2020. And so when I see ESL, I see DreamHack, I think about that merger in 2020. Yeah, it seems very hopeful that we might get to see not only a return to Hearthstone LAN events, but significantly more of them. Because there was no reason to think that, when we got on the other side of the pandemic, that Hearthstone esports weren't going to return to having some LAN events. But it was significantly pared down from Hearthstone circuits that, predated Grandmasters.
Yeah, and those original circuits were kind of dizzying. Like tour stops, there was one on every weekend. I had no idea what they qualified for. I had no idea what the prizes were or what the stakes were. But people were playing Hearthstone. It was cool. But a lot of travel costs. Like, it was really, really expensive unless you had a team that paid for them. So this is it's a transition to the different new world that we live in. It's way easier for them to run tournaments online. Just way, way easier. And what I like the most about this deal, you don't make a 2-year deal if you're planning on canceling Hearthstone esports. So they're making this deal because they expect Hearthstone esports to be a thing. We're not going to go back to tour stops every weekend because that doesn't make a lot of sense. But if nothing else, they're partnering with a known quantity that has a lot of experience in this sort of thing, just making sure that tournaments happen and people get to watch them. So I'll take that, but really would like to see twitch.tv/playhearthstone active again on Saturdays.
I think you and the majority of Hearthstone esports fans. And I can hear Joss going yes in the background. I'm not sure what her take on everything else is, and I really can't wait for it, especially since she used to work for DreamHack. But we'll have to wait for that. And don't worry, listeners, I am sure Jocelyn will not forget to let us know her thoughts on the state of the future of Hearthstone esports. But there's still some unanswered questions that I have a feeling we'll be waiting a little while to get those answered. The Twitch one's real big. If only there was an event coming up with that would give a stage for major announcements like that.
Oh, I see what you're doing. You're talking about BlizzCon Line.
Yes,
That's
I
what you're
am.
doing.
Which, honestly, if I'm
Yeah.
really thinking about it, BlizzCon, they have historically never announced jack in terms of future esport plans at BlizzCon. So there's probably no realistic reason to think that that's where they're going to be like, come out onto their virtual stage of an office chair and a webcam going, and we're going back to Twitch. I don't think it'll probably be a tweet or a press release. Or a reply to the 17,000th person asking on Reddit about that question, and we'll go from there. We'll see. But overall, I'm happy with this news. And so, anyways, before we move on and talk about Ramp Paladin, let's take a break and thank this week's sponsor, which, if you're watching on video, I will add in post. It's Honey, by the way, everybody. You should definitely go to joinhoney.com/TAC. Because you will support the show, and you'll also get a free browser that literally, like, it saves you money. It finds coupon codes automatically for whatever you're buying. So go check them out. Joinhoney.com/TAC. But I'll be editing in a proper read in post. But with that in mind, let's talk some Hearthstone Strategy, which that is like a long lost bumper now. I'm gonna have to make a new one, and I don't have it ready for this one. So, anyways, all right. Oh, strategy segment. How you doing? Been a while. It's been a while since we've like laser focused on a single deck. We really, the rate that the meta has been changing in Hearthstone, Hat, it feels strange to just focus on like a deck a week. It seems like the meta as a whole is this kind of shifting thing that you need to keep your finger on the pulse of.
There have been times since this set has come out and in the past year where it was possible when we had like these oasis moments. But I wrote an article this week to recap the past year, and I looked the calendar year 2020. Do you know how many balance patches there were in the calendar year 2020?
No, I don't actually offhand.
13. More than once a month. Now, Demon Hunter accounted for a few, right? Because Demon Hunter. But there was more than one change per month on average last year. So it's a lot harder to get used to a deck sticking around in the exact same form because it didn't usually. And things constantly shifted. And Dark Moon Races, we were talking about this a bit before the show. No theory crafting has made a huge deal in how the set feels. The theory crafting streams directly impacted day one of every expansion, no matter what. Even if you didn't watch it, if you didn't watch the Scholomance theory crafting streams, on day one you still got hit with the Guardian Animals because people saw Phenos clips and played Guardian Animals. And so you didn't have to opt into that experience. It just happened to you. But there was nothing this time because they announced the set on Tuesday and they released it on Thursday. And they were smart enough to not do theory crafting events on Wednesday, January 20th, because, you know, America things. So we went in completely in the dark, and it was really exciting and interesting, and new things are still being discovered to this very minute, including the deck that we're here to talk about, which basically didn't exist 48 hours ago.
Yes. Yeah, there's and we talked off air just about how like there's a lot of this that seems like last minute flexibility in terms of the mini set and the lead up to it and the lack of like a real big pre-order push and all that kind of traditional things that we see when there's something to buy, right? But yeah, certainly in the last like 24 hours or so, Ramp Paladin has been making serious waves. You can go on YouTube and already find multiple breakdowns of how to play this deck. You can find multiple lists. I just went on HS Replay and found the one with the most games played to just get a vague idea of what the populace is doing when it comes to Ramp Paladin. And so to essentially kind of run this down in its simplest form, what this deck aims to do, if you haven't already seen this or played it or even like taken a friggin' look at Ramp Paladin, is it has this massive Murloc package, but it also runs High Abyss.
Did you say massive package?
You're damn right I did. Thank you for bringing the Joss's soul to the show and making sure it's alive and well. But it also runs Alura. It runs Wandmaker. And it only runs 2 copies of the same spell. So it runs 1 spell. That's it. And it's Tip the Scales. And you can probably see where this is going. Wand Maker generates a 1-cost spell for you to be able to cast. Or, you can go second and start with the coin. And on either turn 4 with the coin or turn 5 with Alura, and having played Wand Maker at some point earlier in the game, you drop Alura, you cast a spell, you get your spell burst. Alura casts a spell from your deck. The only spell in your deck is Tip the Scales, and bam, your board is just slammed with Murlocs. And let's talk about the star of the hour from the new mini set, Crab Rider, which, if you're unfamiliar with, is a 2-mana, 1/4. The mana is for the most part irrelevant, although I have played this from hand, and I've only played like a handful of games with this deck. It's a 1/4 with Rush and Wind Fury. It's a Murloc, so this deck is also running War Leader, given those Murloc buffs. And Crab Rider's got a big booty. Crab Rider has a good chance of sticking around, and there's also a very good chance of having 2 Crab Riders pulled out when Tip the Scales gets Alura'd out.
Yeah. So the dream when you tip the scales is double War Leader, double Fishy Flyer, double Crab Rider. The Fishy Flyers each attack for 8 rush. The Crab Riders are 5 damage rushing twice. So that means you tip the scales for 36 rush damage. If you were on the coin with Alura, that means that happens on turn 4. And if the minions stick around, all that damage is going face, plus the 10 damage from the War Leaders, plus the 3 damage from Alura, which is 49 damage. Now, usually they clear some of your stuff, so you might only deal 30 damage on turn 5. And interestingly enough, if you take the most popular Ramp Paladin deck list, filter by legend stats, on the coin, the win rate of High Abyss Alura is 94.9%. You win 95% of the games you get Alura on the coin. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with Hearthstone statistics, I will translate, that's bananas. That's the highest win rate I have ever seen of any card ever. And the title of the show this week, Alura is Barnes in a wig. Because this is 100% Barnes. You're recruiting out Tip the Scales. It feels super gross. This is just plan A. But 95% win rate, there are a lot of questions about how real this deck is, about how much a part of the meta this will be. You can't look at that kind of number and say that people won't be trying to do it. Even if it's inconsistent, winning 19 games out of 20 when you do a specific thing is pretty insane.
Yes, yeah. It's the kind of thing where, like, I was going back and forth. I'm like, do we do this? Because, like, I played a handful of games. I ended with like a 50% win rate, and I started with a much lower one than that because this deck can brick. But the more I thought about it, and that stat that you just put out there, it's just like players are gonna have to contend with this. Like, you're gonna run into it, and so it helps to understand how it works. And more specifically, I think the meat of this conversation is what happens if they don't get Alura out on curve, because that is it's just plan A. That's your first plan, and it has a plan B, and it has an okay plan C.
Plan A, Alura.
You do not disappoint. You are so on brand, sir.
Thank you.
But you may also notice, eagle-eyed viewers on any video form of this show, and I don't know, people with just a sense on audio, that Nozdormu the Timeless is in this deck. And if it's been a while since you've taken a look at the second Nozdormu we've seen and constructed, I'll remind you he's a 4-mana 8/8, and the battle cry is set each player to 10 mana crystals. So if you don't find Alura, you have a backup plan of some serious meat in this deck. So I wouldn't go out of my way to defend and argue and say that the deck list that we are currently looking at, we are talking about as a point of reference, is absolutely 100% set in stone. But every single version of this that I've seen has had a bunch of 10 mana meat at the end of its curve. And they run N'Zoth, God of the Deep. They run Scrapyard Colossus. They run Yashiraj, the Defiler. A lot of them are running the this list that I have up doesn't have it up, but the 6-mana weapon that spawns the Taunt Divine Shield chonker. There's strong mana in here. You can just end up casting Tip the Scales for the actual mana cost because you know Stormmood. There's a lot of things to do with that much mana that there's a good chance your opponent won't be able to keep up with, even though you're handing them 10 mana first.
So the reason that Nozdormu works here is that Red Scale Dragon Tamer, the 2-mana 2/3, that when it dies, it gets a dragon. You play a lot of huge, high-cost stuff, but the only dragon in your deck is Nozdormu. There are some lists out there that play Circus Amalgam, which I think is a mistake because you don't want to get that. If you don't hit Alura, and you do hit Red Scale Dragon Tamer, if you play it on 2 and they kill it by turn 4, then you just slam Nozdormu. Now, the deck has catch-up 10 drops. Dark Moon Rabbit, in particular, is in this deck and appears to not be immune. The 10-mana 1/1 with Cleave and Poisonous and Rush.
There's so much of this that is tailored, that there are one-ofs, and there are like one type, and it's very much for a reason. And so Dark Moon Rabbit, because it's a beast and is the only beast in the deck, comes back off of N'Zoth. On top of the fact that this deck just wants to not die. It seems to be the number one way it fails, besides like starting the game with 2 Tip the Scales and never finding Nozdormu. But Dark Moon Rabbit really, really helps just not die, which is something I experienced on more than one occasion while giving this deck a test run. And then it coming back off in N'Zoth is just good measure.
It's a lot, or you can play Scrapyard Colossus to not die. Like, you have to play some kind of impactful 10-drop to swing the board back when you give your opponent 10 mana. And a lot of times in this format, your opponent's going to try and kill you on that turn. They're going to try and play, Glowfly Swarm Soul the Force, their Druid, or a bunch of rogue stuff and Nitro Boost Poison and get you. Or, Mage, and if you give Mage 10 mana, they're going to Mage you. So you have to play something that's going to control the board. Or you can just play a Tip the Scales for 8 mana and then have 2 mana left over. Or you can play a bunny and corrupt your Carnival Clown, and then you N'Zoth back all that stuff. You're just trying to be a better deck at 10 mana than everybody else because you're expecting to get there and they're not. And Nozdormu helps you get there. And Nozdormu's mulligan win rate is still pretty high. Overall, it is one of the highest win rate cards in the deck. But I'll note, you can tell how broken this deck is, because the second highest win rate card in the deck on mulligan is Tip the Scales. Now, you don't keep it very much. You only keep it 18% of the time. But if you have Nozdormu, you keep Tip the Scales. That should set off alarm bells for anyone paying attention to the play pattern of this deck. This is a blunt instrument.
Yeah,
This is not a subtle deck. This is something that's trying to do a very big, splashy thing.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the reason it's the Tip the Scales is so dangerous is that the Murlocs live. And so if you are winning with Tip the Scales in your mulligan, it stands to reason that's because you played Nozdormu and you spent the mana to cast Tip the Scales, which means your opponent had all the mana they could ever hope for to deal with what just happened, because these are not charged Murlocs. What's dealing the killing blow a lot of times is that Crab Rider with that Wind Fury, with the buffs that come along with the other Murlocs that come out. What's killing them is the fact that the board isn't cleared by the next turn after Tip the Scales goes off. And in quite a few cases, it looks like not even when the opponent has 10 mana, which is nuts.
Yeah, it's a lot. The deck is built on a foundation of just jumping straight to 10 mana or cheating the curve and jumping straight to Tip the Scales. I don't know overall where the deck's going to be, but it's currently the best deck in Legend by win rate and HS replay. And I will say that even if it ends up being somewhat mediocre because of the unreliability, play pattern is not really where I want a deck in Standard to be.
No.
And what I really don't like about this deck is how expensive it is, and how many people are going to feel compelled to craft a Rise of Shadow Legendary in Nozdormu the Timeless, which has been unplayable for the entire time it's been in Standard, 2 months before rotation. And this deck has a ton of epics, a ton of legendaries. It's not cheap. We don't know much about it. And honestly, if a card has a 95% win rate ever, they should probably nerf it. I am worried about the splash damage on people's collections from this deck. So I hope it ends up not being good. But so far, initial indications on the ladder indicate that it's both popular and powerful.
Yeah, indeed. And it's setting off alarms as well for me, because it's the kind of thing. It's just like, it may not, even if it ends up not being a good deck, it's just the kind of thing that when it does work, that's not the kind of thing I like losing to, because it feels like there was nothing that could be done. But as mentioned, it can break, and so and it certainly did in the handful of games that I played. Had multiple games where I started with both tip the scales and never found Nosdormu. So it's just like, okay, cool. And in almost every case, I was just run over by an aggro deck, which I, again, have been seeing a lot of since the mini set released. Little bit of Zoo sprinkled in there, but seems to have died off today, at least in my experience. So
you'll see more of that coming up. With the rise of Ramp Paladin and Token Druid, Zoo is here specifically to feast on those two decks.
Well put. So we will have a deck list here in the show notes for you. There's still, it's very low on games played, so it's not hard to find the most popular list on an aggregate site like HS Replay. There's, everywhere else, you pick your poison, whatever Hearthstone fan site you like for decks, probably going to be able to find a list for yourself, because it's still settling. I like running Sphere of Sapience in mine. That's another card I rather enjoy in this, which just continues to bloat the dust cost of crafting this. So I'm not sure you came out and said it, so I will come out and say it, Hat, which is, if you're a frugal Hearthstone player with your dust or your money, maybe wait on this one and see how it pans out, because it is a very, very expensive deck list if you are missing a lot of the key components.
Yeah, I'll be more explicit. Do not craft Nosdormu with the Timeless. Don't do it. It's just not a good idea. If you really want to play this deck, borrow decks from a friend, play 2 games, get it out of your system, then go run some BGs and wait until they nerf it. Or wait until a good counter is developed and then play the counter. If this becomes defining part of the standard meta, I feel confident they'll make a change. And even then, the list we're looking at right now, 5 legendaries, 9 epics. Do not make a deck where half of it rotates out, where the dust cost is over 10,000 dust. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Any other recommendations outside of this? We don't want to deep dive it, but what have you been enjoying other than Ramp Paladin? Which it sounds like, frankly, you haven't been enjoying.
I enjoyed it I enjoy some tavern brawls, right? So I'll play them for a couple games and be like, that was fun, but I don't want that to be a part of the meta. It's goofy the first time I did it. The first month that Big Priest was on the ladder in Standard, when it looked like a total joke of a deck and we were playing Forbidden Shaping, I enjoyed that. A year later, not so much. So, I played a bunch of games this deck. I said, this is stupid. I posted some screenshots. And if it keeps happening, I think the novelty will wear off pretty quick. I have been enjoying some Gibberling Druid, which is... finally, that card's good in Standard. It's very fun. It's not quite Token Druid. It's not quite Spell Druid. It's Spell Druid with 2 Gibberlings. And this deck has been quite good for me. Sometimes you just play a Gibberling on turn 1 and play 7 minions on the first turn. Sometimes you just Fungal Fortunes into a Glowfly Swarm. What I've actually done quite frequently in this deck, you usually don't want to play Nature Studies on turn 1. I'll just play like a Dreamway Guardians or Rising Winds on turn 2, play the second half on turn 3, and then the Nature Studies, and then that discount goes towards Glowfly Swarm on turn 4, and then Arbor Up or Savage Roar to kill them on turn 5. It gets out of hand pretty quickly, and if you aren't against a risky skipper, then you're usually faster than most other decks, including other Druid decks. So this has been enjoyable. Arbor Up is a great card. Great card from the new mini set. It is 2 4/3s and a little bloodlust that sticks around. It's a very strong card.
Very cool. I got onto a Highlander Hunter kick. I was really boring in the opening days of the mini set releasing, because the way I typically like to learn is piloting something that, if it's new, it's easy to pilot, or isn't new and I know how to pilot, because I'd rather kind of let the ladder wash over me and concentrate more on like seeing what's out there and how it works and going, what the hell is that? And then going searching online and doing all of these things on the side so that I can gather these stories and kind of have an idea of where the meta is at least for me and kind of average Hearthstone player land. However, as you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, I feel like I kind of shot myself in the foot because the meta is all over the freaking place. It has not been the same from day to day. At times, it hasn't felt the same from hour to hour. And so I probably should have just went, had some fun, been ridiculous, tried some stuff, failed horribly, had a laugh or two. But yeah, that being said,
there's still more goofy stuff going on right now. There are new things coming out every day that are worth trying. I obviously love Rogue and I love Nitro Boost Poison, but a friend of mine, Unlimited Power, linked me a list that he'd been working on. You put the Crab Rider in the Rogue, and then you have Nitro Crabs because it turns into a 3/4, and it boosts your weapon. You mess with the Crabbo, you get the Stabbo.
Ooh, that is nutty. I like that. I like that. Yeah. Totem Shine is also doing really well, but as far as I've seen, it hasn't changed a lick. So
no,
if you want something new,
it's the list is totally the same.
Yeah. Yeah, but Ramp Paladin is wild. If you happen to be sitting on Nosdormu, you can probably find a list that will work. As mentioned, probably don't go out of your way to craft him just for this. We'll have to see. So, year ago, definitely 2 years ago, never would have asked this question or tried to make this call because it would seem like, oh, well, we won't know for 6 months. But the rate that we get balance updates in Hearthstone now has completely changed. So, do we think Ramp Paladin's gonna see nerf? And do you think it's gonna be Nosdormu or Alura or some other piece we're not looking at? I'm looking at Crab Rider and just going, I think your booty's too big.
I mean, listen, he's thick. It's okay. I'm gonna ask you a question back.
Okay.
If we expect new set and rotation to be what? End of March-ish?
Yep.
Right? Do you think that they will leave the format as is until then?
No.
No way, right? Like, there's just no way.
The Team 5 we have now, the Hearthstone that we have now, the expectations have changed. It's a new game. Like, they've for better or worse. Hell, I started reading your PC Gamer article. You talked about it. Like, they've made big strides. It wasn't all perfect. There were missteps along the way. But this is where we're at now. This is Hearthstone now. Hearthstone is constantly getting messed with.
So we know there's going to be a nerf. If we know there's going to be a nerf, probably in 3 weeks to a month-ish, I see no way that a 95% win rate card doesn't qualify. And really, like, the deck feels unfair when you cheat out the mana. But even the Nosdormu turns, sometimes you Nosdormu and then you die the next turn, or you get put in a situation that you can't really get your way out of. Alura coin on 4, if they don't have specifically Bear Off Broom or Brawl, they're going to die. So I think that just making Alura cost more or putting a cap on the cost of what she can recruit would make more sense. But I'd expect they address it. I also expect, honestly, I would love them to nerf Lord Bear Off to 4 mana because a 3 is so efficient in terms of removal, and Warrior has gone untouched for the entire expansion so far, despite having like 4 really strong decks. I'd love for them to nudge Warrior a little bit and just shake up the meta one more time before rotation. But if this stays around, there's no way that it dodges some kind of adjustment. Yeah,
I'm glad you brought Warrior because I do have a conquest story with Ramp Paladin to share with you, which is I stared down a Warrior that got himself up to over 60 effective health with armor, and I still won that game.
Yeah, there are a lot of things about that sentence that I don't care for.
Yeah, and it was just one of these moments of like, that wasn't even close. That's how I left that game. I felt bad after that game. However, I also feel like the bullet is coming for this deck sometime soon, and I kind of just want to keep piloting it because it is such a like coin flip of if this is going to work or not, and it's ridiculous. And getting to just, I like it more. I like playing this deck more when it doesn't work out and I go down the Nosdormu path. That's more fun to me.
And you can totally Nosdormu and lose and still feel like it was a fun game for both players. There's no world in which you recruit out Tip the Scales on turn 4 where both players feel good about it. So if you just leave Nosdormu alone and just make Alura less high-rolly, then you're fine. And the deck can stick around for a little bit, and it doesn't totally devalue people's Nosdormu graphs, which, again, do not craft Nosdormu the Timeless if you are listening to The Angry Chicken on January 27th, 2021, do not craft Nostormu the Timeless.
Or on the 28th, or on the 29th, or any date where a nerf has yet to happen. I don't think the nerf's coming for Nostormu. I don't think the nerf's coming for Nostormu, so you're not going to get your dust back. So there you have it. I'm so you're saying Alura. I think it's going to be Crab Rider. I think we're going to see like Crab Rider go down to 3 or something. Like, again, it's early. It seems insane. If this was 2 years ago, I never would have had this conversation. But here we find ourselves. Crab Rider's just too sticky.
I mean, he can take a shower. I don't know. It's not like I'm are you getting Crab Ridered by any other deck right now where it feels like that's the defining card of the game? It's okay for there to be a good neutral. The only reason that it seems crazy is because it comes out with 5 attack in pairs, and you didn't pay for it.
To me, I don't even mind the 5 attack as much as the fact that it survives an entire turn is where my focus goes. That's the part of this whole deck that just seems insane to me. Is like, how does this even stick around? And I don't know. Because you're competing with your recruited minions against their first 3 turns of plays.
Like, if that came down on turn 9, the minions are bigger, but it comes down in turn 4. So the minions are tutus.
And you're facing down paladins and warriors that aren't doing this, that are running like serious control pieces, and they may be sitting on 10 mana and they still can't deal with it. That's where I just go, ooh, wow, this is too much.
Yeah, let's do something about that.
Yep. So keep an eye out for it. So anyways, let's have a real quick Battlegrounds talk. You know, I think we kind of got into it a little bit at the top of the show, but some new heroes, some new minions. Let's do it.
Have a good battle, friend.
Man, I you know, the most recent patch I don't think has been a major upheaval to Battlegrounds. But again, overall, I am just enjoying it so much. I really like where Battlegrounds is at the moment. And I've reached the point where I am dreading spells going away. I really like them.
We did not see this coming. I think everyone was nervous about the spells just ratcheting up the power level so much. And I remember hearing, even before the Darkmoon prizes came out, people were worried about the pace of play in BGs, that the games were too fast. I like that I can fit in a bunch of games pretty quickly. Yes, they're swingy, but you're right, the spells have kind of smoothed that out. So I wonder if it'll feel swingy, but it'll feel harder to come back when they go away. Because I've also really, really enjoyed this particular patch in the Darkmoon prize mechanic. I hope they bring back something similar in the future.
Yeah. The new heroes haven't landed particularly high. They're not what I would refer to as meta defining. I am quite surprised to see Ticketus like so low. He's landed at damn near a 5 average placement. If you go and look at HS Replay, and I pulled this from top 20, which is 6.5K MMR and above. And that just seems wild to me because spells seem very powerful, and Ticketus gets double the spells, but it clearly is not enough. And I'm curious how much of that is user error, but that's also why I was looking at top 20. Like, I'm assuming if you're in top 20 MMR, you're at 6K and above, or 6.5K and above in the case of HS Replay. Like, you probably have a good idea of the value proposition of the spells that are in this pool.
But you got to get to the late game to use the spells. Like, if you die by turn 8, you get no benefit by it except 1 extra prize on turn 4. If you look at the top heroes, the top 6, Elise, Secret Guy, Cthulhu, Omu, Rag, and Alakir. Rag is kind of an outlier here because he does need you to survive a little bit, but the rest either directly help you with survival or they help you power level. And that's what this format is all about. You're not buying more stuff from the shop. All the shop heroes have dropped a lot. It's all about direct value because it's a power level meta. And Ticketus really rewards you if you're able to survive for a while, but you're probably only able to survive for a while if you hit the high roll, whereas these other heroes that are at the top are just way more reliable at getting there.
Yeah, it's a good point, but I was just, I really overvalued spells, I guess. And it does, I think, play to the concern you mentioned just a second ago of, hey, when spells leave, is it going to be swingier with no chance of comeback? because clearly, like with more spells, it's not enough for Ticketus. And even more surprising, because I definitely on the show, I believe, made the call that I think Ticketus is going to end up higher than Greybow. I'm just dead wrong. Greybow not coming in high, but coming in significantly above Ticketus.
Yeah, it's Greybow really helps mid-game survival by boosting units you already want to take. Like it makes Bronze Warden better. Bronze Warden didn't need to get better, but it makes Bronze Warden better. It makes all of your token makers a lot more relevant in the mid game. Like your Harvest Golem becomes a real thing. The Disciple of Cthulhu, the 2/2 Reborn, just turns into a 3/3 when it comes back. Like it's a really nice boost early game. It's kind of like a Rat King. It doesn't suck, and you can curate around it.
Yeah.
So there's not you can't reliably go taunt comp, even though that's the dream. It is kind of nice with that. I forget the name of it. The 4/5 that gives taunt minions +3 attack when they're attacked. It's got some nice synergy there, and you can take that minion in the mid game, and it kind of feels like a Deathwing Rat Pack situation. So
that's a good point. Yeah,
there's some synergy to be had there. It's mostly the Ticketus rewards you when you're already doing well, and you don't need a hero that does that.
Yeah, and Greybow helps you survive, which is, as we talked about, is one of the things you want to do right now. Make it to that late game. So yeah, I've played quite a few Battlegrounds games since the patch came out, and have not had either of them offered to me. So and now it's kind of getting to that point where I'm just like, I'm not sure I'm super hyped. I think I still want to try them, but it's
So here's my question to you. Normally, 2 months into the expansion, we get our giant BGs patch. Now, timing is different now because they moved the expansion a month earlier. Do you think that we'll be able to play with whatever the major BGs update is at BlizzCon Line? Do you think that's the release time, or do you see a different time coming?
I mean, we already got the major update for Scholomance.
But it's not Scholomance anymore. Yeah, that was the taunts, right?
Yeah. Are you saying that we're due a large update for the mini set?
For BGs, it's like every 4 months, right? It's usually in the old system, the old rotation timing. We got dragons halfway through DoD. We got pirates halfway through Ashes. We got elementals halfway through Skolo. We got taunts like, when was that? Was that like October, November? What time was
that? Was for sorry,
October.
I wasn't even thinking about Skolo. I meant taunt was for Dark Moon. So we've already gotten the Dark Moon major update.
But that was when was that? Was that October?
I need to look this up.
Feel like yes.
This is Chat room is not coming to our rescue, so I'm googling in the background.
It's okay. It wouldn't be the craziest thing we've done live this episode.
Yeah, but that was fun because we got to do a play-by-play talk through it, and then get excited. So that was Winter Veil update, I believe. Also brought in taunts, which was December 14th, and that brought in prizes. That brought in. That did bring in taunts, yes? Or was that just...
Yeah, but so do you remember in the Dark Moon prizes patch notes, they said the Dark Moon prizes are in for 2 months?
Yes.
So 2 months from that is February.
Yep.
Mid-February. BlizzCon Line is February 19th. Do you think that we're going to get a major BG's update then, or do you think that this pool is it for a little while?
I think we're going to get a minor BG update. Along the lines of the one we just saw. A couple new heroes, maybe a minion or two going in, going out. I thought you were heading towards the next major update, which I'm like, well, unless the next expansion is also coming out, then no, I don't think so. I could see them previewing it, which is something they don't typically do, but they also preview things. They at times have previewed things that they haven't historically, well, maybe not so much for Hearthstone, but at BlizzCon, it's not uncommon to see previews for portions of games that typically don't get previews. But I'm also kind of hoping that that's not the case. So I think prizes leaving is going to be its own thing. Prizes are just going to leave. I could see it coinciding with an update, but I don't think it's going to be on the scale of Taunt Minions / Old God Heroes. Or Pirates or Elementals or any of the other major updates that we tend to, well, I think it was Ixar forever ago that had announced that it was, hey, there's going to be a major update with every expansion, but, post the expansion launch to Battlegrounds.
You're probably right, but I want you to be wrong, so I'm going to disagree with you. They're going to add so much stuff to Battlegrounds at BlizzCon, and we're going to be able to play it. No, you're probably right. Because they still have to release that other new game mode this expansion.
Yeah.
Remember that they're doing that?
Because
I forgot.
I think that's going to be at BlizzCon.
They have time to do all this stuff.
Listen, it's going to be close, but no one said that they had to release it in a meaningful amount of time before the next expansion. The new game mode, that is. So, if you're already staring down a major online event where you want to raise hype, I know Blizzard tends to release things when they're ready, but come on, wouldn't you go, hey, can we just release this a week later than maybe we were planning on it so we can make a big splash at BlizzCon Online?
Probably line, I imagine they'll line everything up with BlizzCon Online. And we have to hear about so many things. We have to hear about Classic. We have to hear about... My body's not going to be ready for the amount of stuff they're going to drop. Because do you remember the Ashes of Outland Year of the Phoenix announcement press conference? Do you remember that?
Yes.
We had the show notes for that day for Coin Concede where we had 8 pages of news. Are they going to do that again?
I think that it's just Hearthstone now. And I know you and I and Joss and probably everyone we talk to that is even remotely interested in Hearthstone or involved in Hearthstone content creation have had this discussion. But that is just kind of Hearthstone now. I don't really think it's realistic to cover it all.
It's not.
Kind of need to specialize. And that's why, I'm sorry, Arena and Duels and Tavern Brawl fans, but at a certain point, it's just I'm most interested in Battlegrounds and Standard. And so that's what we're going to cover here. Because I just realistically can't cover every corner of Hearthstone. And if I'm being honest with myself, I'm not really interested in some of the corners of Hearthstone. They're so different. They are such excruciating.
There's so much.
Hearthstone is now. We're done with Battlegrounds. We're just talking about the state of Hearthstone, and we're getting meta about content creation. Hearthstone is now. I'm a big music fan. Hearthstone is a music festival. Choose the music festival you're the most interested in, and because we're still in a pandemic, music festivals were this thing that happened where a lot of bands got together at a fairgrounds, and there were multiple stages, all playing shit all at the same time, and you had to choose. You had to choose who you wanted to see. Mine was Warped Tour. Grew up going there. Went there every summer. Got sunburnt. Florida's hot. And I had to go, where am I going to go? Do I want to see the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones over here? But at the same damn time, Motion City Soundtrack is playing the side stage. Boss Tones brings the history, but I kind of like Motion City more. So I had to make a call. And Hearthstone's the same way. Hell, if you've ever been to BlizzCon in person, that's how BlizzCon works. There's too many stages. Things are overlapping. You need to make a difficult decision. And that's Hearthstone now. Hearthstone's just this big festival. And there's a lot of things happening simultaneously, but you also might not be into all of the bands. There might be things happening at the same time where you go, well, that's fine. I'm not really into that particular genre of music. So I'm just going to stay here on the main stage watching what I like. And that's where Hearthstone is at now. I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. I now miss live music.
God, I know. There have been a few times this past year where a band that I like releases a new song and I listen to it. I'm like, this is sweet. When are they touring? They're not touring. And I'm sad now.
Or if you don't mind watching live stuff in video form, it's better than it's ever been because there's a very good chance they're doing one, if not multiple, live stream concerts.
Garrett, I want to go to a concert and I want to go to a Chili's. We talked about this.
We did.
That's all I want to do.
The Chili's happened off air. So if anyone's like, what the hell are you talking about?
I want to go to an average chain restaurant. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. You're not doing takeout Chili's. And if you are, if you're really passionate about Chili's, all for you. But Chili's is like my go-to when I just want to eat my weight in chips and whatever is happy hour That's what we're doing. It's a place to like eat a lot of chips, drink cheap beer, talk to my friends. I'm not keeping my Chili's dream alive during lockdown. I'm not getting Chili's takeout. It's not the same experience. And at least here in Florida, their social distancing is butts. So just haven't been to one. I miss it. I miss mundane chain restaurant interaction. That's what I miss.
So Hearthstone, the game. Hearthstone the game it's not really a game, it's a platform now. And yep. I talked to Tiago over at HS Replay to get some numbers for the article I just wrote. And it's really fascinating. Generally, there are more BG's games played per day than standard games, at least at this point in the year. At the launch of Rotation, right? When Ashes came out. Definitely the other way around. Crazy spikes in games played. Demon Hunter very exciting, and overall, like standard is still very vibrant. But on a day-to-day basis, especially towards the end of the year, BG is slightly more popular. But the standard games for January of this year are more than the standard game of January last year. BG's isn't taking away from standard. Hearthstone is just growing as a platform. BG's players aren't just converts from standard, because they're also players from BG's that are converting to standard or to wild or to whatever other format. And you think about it, I've heard people talk on Twitch about, I think I mentioned this last week, I repeat myself sometimes. You see people talk about how on Twitch the top 10 are all BG's. Yeah, because auto battlers are the new hot genre. And then Connor Koo, hired from QA to the Tavern Brawl team, made a Tavern Brawl that turned into Battlegrounds and casually won the brand new genre with a mode that is wildly crazy popular out of nowhere and is the new big it game. It's a second game in the same client. So it's pretty incredible to see that BG has the same, like it has more games logged, but standard hasn't really gone down. It's just that this new explosive product added to the Hearthstone universe has also been similarly popular. The universe we live in is getting bigger, but that means as well there's going to be a lot less crossover between BG players and standard players. People that want to listen to Wild will go listen to Wild podcast. They want to listen to Arena. They listen to, I don't know what they listen to. They want to listen to Duels. Then they talk to themselves while they're playing Duels. I like the format, but there's not a lot of content
I was going to say, if you want to talk about Duels, they should start a podcast because I don't know of
yes.
any.
They should. But, you know, it's you can't play all of these modes at once. I can't find the time to play all the modes in Hearthstone. And as a content creator, you got to choose, because otherwise you have 5-hour podcast each week. It's not really tenable. And also it's not what people are looking for. You can't be a general, so you got to pick something. I love that Hearthstone has too much to do, but it's definitely a different world for us as content creators. And you start to see some internal fragmentation of like, I'm a BG player, I want this thing. I'm a standard player, I want this thing. I'm a wild player, I want this thing. The development team can only do so much at once. So it's been fascinating to see the new set of problems and the new set of solutions that have developed over the course of the past year or two with what is really turning into Hearthstone 2.0, the new world.
Yeah. Yeah. Now if a more spry and flexible game client could actually usher in literal Hearthstone 2.0, that would be delightful.
It would be delightful, and so would, I'll play it on my unicorn that's riding over my rainbow, because that's about as likely to happen.
Well, Jocelyn isn't here to say, as long as I get you the unicorn, so I'll say it for her.
I would like that. We can get you the unicorn. That's cool. I'm down.
Well, let's take an email before we wrap up. I teased last week that we got a physical letter from one Rational Pi. However, Joss needs to be here to answer some of these questions. So it will once again be paused, as will Hachikumo's delightful trivia that he put together. As consolation, we'll take a question from Hachikumo. Take a question. By the way, you can send your emails to tacpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're a patron, just write us in the patron Discord, skip the inbox entirely, or hit us up on Patreon, like direct message, however you want to get it to us. Skip the inbox if you want over at patreon.com/TAC. But Hachikumo wrote in and said that some people find Tavern Brawl to be a quote-unquote dead mode, and some find it to be a weekly pack. But since it has its own button, why not introduce Tavern Brawl plus Battlegrounds? Since Battlegrounds has been popular, I'm sure people are throwing out wacky Battleground ideas to test, and those ideas should be tested in a Tavern Brawl format. What do you think? You got any crazy Battlegrounds ideas? Start at tier 6, only one tribe available, whole lobby of the same hero? I kind of like all of those.
This sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm...
Yes.
Why not? Like, but for the love of God, make it brawl. Because all of these just seem like, did you get lucky? You win. Congrats. Like, to a degree like we haven't seen before. Everyone starts at tier 6. Well, highest roll I saw was a tier 3 minion. So the guy that found Goldrin is probably going to whoop my butt. But this does sound very fun. And you're right. It does have its own button. And there's a part of me, this has been in the back of my mind, and we haven't talked about it because we haven't had time to like explore any weird thoughts in Hearthstone.
I have opinions on this. Go ahead.
Okay. The kind of darker thought I've been having about Tavern Brawl is like, I could see it losing its status as a top level button in Hearthstone.
Never will. It will never. I feel very confident about that.
Okay.
If you look at, did you read Ixar's AMA tweets this past week?
Haphazardly.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask a question that seems unrelated, but is super related. Duels. Have you ever gone in, chosen a hero power, chosen a treasure, seen that you have to build your own deck, clicked back out, and started a BGs?
No, but I knew what I was getting into when I clicked on duels.
Makes sense. I've done that a few times where the mental energy required to build the deck before I started playing, I was just like, I don't feel like dealing with this right now. BGs is click and play. Tavern Brawl is the most click playable thing. And the biggest problem with card games is how do I quickly get into something that I don't have to think about with click play? Tavern Brawl is the freest thing for low engagement players that log in every week, click the button right in front of them, they play, they go, they get their pack, and that's it. That is why it needs to be a top level button. It is the sole purpose of giving something on the main screen they click play and don't think about. And Hearthstone is short on modes that have that, and I think it's part of the reason why BGs is so popular. Now, Ice Coffee saying in the chat, Tavern Brawl does indeed still have deck builder weeks. Those are lower engagement Tavern Brawls. The auto deck builder helps, but they actually are less popular in terms of how many games get played because of that reason. But some of those deck builder things are, you know, when it pick 2 cards and your deck is half of one, half the other, that's not the same kind of deck building restriction as building a 30-card deck. You think of 2 cards like, I bet that Metal Tooth Leaper and Mech Warper would be cool together, and you click those 2 cards and then you go play. It doesn't take as long. But yeah, the full deck weeks are different. Having a click, play, go on the front page, so important, which is why you're always going to see solo content in the front page and why you're always going to see Tavern Brawl there.
That's fair. In that sense, then, I would like it to, I guess, to have a little more fanfare because it just, I forget about it. I completely forget about it. But I'm also probably not the target demographic for it.
You are more engaged than people that don't have Hearthstone podcasts. And there are a lot more people that don't have a Hearthstone podcast than people that do. Yeah, I do miss Joe Mag. Like, I miss having a dedicated, really wonderful person that created these wonderful Tavern Brawls. I don't know who's working on TVs right now. I'm sure they're great, but it definitely, Joe Mag felt like he had a spark for it, and there were a lot of really interesting things going on.
Well,
and I do
very
miss
vocal about it.
Yeah.
Like,
and you know, we got Clone Ball again today, and it was hard to get excited about playing Clone Ball again, and there were a lot of repeats. So I do wish that it was something that I felt like I wanted to do every week instead of something that I should probably do each week. But at least you can clear quests in there now, which is something else too. Like, that's important. Yeah.
It's just a thought in the back of my mind, just because it doesn't seem like it gets it gets a lot of hype or exciting new additions. Tavern Brawl, that is.
Yeah, you can say the same about solo content. Like, solo content, we're getting Book of Heroes, which I honestly forget have been releasing. Didn't we get one like last week?
Yeah, but again, it's like, it's still a major splash that hits my radar, even though I haven't gone and played any of the recent ones. Like, it's just
like, at least it pops up in the client when it opens.
It's not a draw for me, even though honestly, I think they're really well done. When I do go in and poke at them just to kind of get an idea, like, they're really well done. I can see like as a fan of Warcraft lore, I can really see the love and nerddom taking place in those. But again, it's just like, also as a Warcraft lore nut, I've probably seen all of these in the original games that these pieces of lore came from, and I think that was a better vessel for the story being told in a lot of cases. But yeah, it's still really well-made content, even if it's not directed at me.
Yep. Also, side note about Warcraft lore, someone was asking about Jaina's story in a Discord today. Linked them to Warbringer's video about Daughter of the Sea. Still brings chills. So good.
It's incredible. Not meant to be a shot at BFA, but one of the best things that come out of BFA.
The entire Jaina storyline and that video was really good. And I'm going to take a shot at BFA. It was bad.
I like the leveling.
It was a bad experience.
There's some really good zones.
There was some cool stuff going on, but Shadowlands is cool.
Shadowlands is way better, for sure.
Yep.
But that's also not a high bar. There's a lot of, where's Jocelyn? My God. We're talking about esports. We're getting sidetracked with World of Warcraft lore. My goodness.
I had to bring the experience.
The soul of Joss is alive and well on this episode.
And that's the tooth. You can do the outro now.
You can find more Angry Chicken at theangrychicken.com, a domain which Hover has been reminding me daily is about to renew and charge me for. So, which reminds me to thank our lovely patrons who support us with their hard-earned money over at patreon.com/TAC. Allow me to do stupid things like buy more bundles than I meant to, which now I think about it, I'm over my personal Hearthstone budget as a result of those tests. So thank you very much for the support, everybody. If you want to support the show, check it out. Patreon.com/TAC. Get an ad-free version of the show. Get access to our Discord as well as some other perks. Also, huge thanks to our Patreon producers, Declan H. and Cheesy Bob. Thank you so much, you too. To everyone, also extra special shout out. Everyone who sent in kind words, about 400 last week. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. It means more than you may know, and some of you may also know exactly how much it means. So thank you so much for that, everybody. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm so glad we got to be able to put together that roundtable hat. That was a treat. It was so good. You're in the biz. You understand. It's not often you get to just like hang out with a Blizzard developer as if they were just another arm of the podcast that just sits around and shoots the shit for 2 hours. It's
like being next to Slissa, who is well known in the Hearthstone community for being Slissa. That was pretty cool.
You've been pressing for answers to questions. No answers will be given.
And also like discovering etymology. It was a good show.
Someone timestamped that, by the way, and I thank them for it because I was trying to find it to show Katie because Katie was like, "Hey, how was the roundtable?" I was like, oh my God, Slissa learned where the term podcast came from, and I was dying. And then I went over.
It was incredible.
I pulled up the VOD and I was trying to find it. I was having a hard time, and then a lovely commenter timestamped it, and I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." So
yes,
if you missed it, if you somehow missed our 400th episode, go check it out. Either from the video version over at youtube.com/amovetv. But Hat, you have a multitude of podcasts of your own, multiple Hearthstone podcasts of your own, as well as a brand spanking new article up over on PC Gamer. Where can people find all of your lovely content?
The source of my quote-unquote content is at RidiculousHat on Twitter. That is my social nexus, as it were. I'm also probably in the Hearthstone Discord that you are in, listener, and a few more. Coin Concede over at coinconcede.com. That's about bridging the gap between casual and competitive. Vicious Syndicate over at vicioussyndicate.com. That's an analytical, weekly, data-driven review of the standard meta. And if you like the game Hades, I do a podcast about that too because I have a problem. My wife is seeking intervention, but that's over at twitter.com/hidden aspects. Also, you go to pcgamer.com. I am the top Hearthstone article today. The state of Hearthstone in 2021 was a lot of fun to write, and glad to be over there on pcgamer.com. I grew up reading that magazine. It's super weird to be on the site.
I love PC Gamer, and yeah, I made the jump from the magazine as well. I still think they're doing great work over there. like as a modern thing I can access on the internet. And I'm so stoked that they tap you to write pieces. Like it's really awesome because if you can't tell by the fact that we keep reinviting you on the show, I think you have a really good head for this game, and an even better way of being able to like put that into words. So it's
thank you. Yeah, it's been helpful to just be so immersed in Hearthstone content to try and take all this information, which is from so many different places. You know, earlier we talked about something that Ixar said in a tweet last week. It's hard for the average person to keep up with that volume of information, but luckily I have an unhealthy obsession with Hearthstone social media.
Yes. So wonderful, everybody. Make sure you follow Joss Plays on Twitter. Follow the show at TAC Podcast. I can be found at Garrett Art, as well as this podcast and every single other one that I produce can be found over at amove.tv. New WoW Killer coming at you tomorrow morning. New Into the Nexus coming to you tomorrow night. And I'll be mercifully not producing the instance every Friday. So go check all of those shows out. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Angry Chicken. For me, for Jocelyn, who will return next week. And you can do it yourself, Ridiculous Hat. Job's done.
Job's done.